So hi and welcome to today's webinar. The session is part of the IWA and Canal River Trust training programme for 2022-23. My name is Jodie Weathers. I know many of you, and I'm the Restoration Coordinator here at Canal River Trust. We've also got Jenny Hodson from the IWA, and I'll let Jenny introduce herself.
Sorry, I'll unmute myself first. Hi, I'm Jenny. I work for the IWA as the volunteer manager and do some of the restoration hub work, but mainly working with various volunteers to help support that and rebuild the membership of the IWA.
Thanks, Jenny. So for today's webinar, we're excited that we're joined by both Mita and Grace from the Young Trustees movement. As many of you know, we've been working with the Young Trustees movement since early 2021, and they've kindly held a number of sessions for us, including a breakout session at this year's Restoration Conference, which many of you will have attended. Well, I'll hand over to Mita and Grace and they can introduce themselves, and we're going to have a little bit of an overview before we start the Q&A.
Great, I can kick off. Hi everyone, great to have this room of volunteers here. It's as Jodie said, we've been working for a while with you all, and I've personally just been really inspired by like the amount of passion and heart that goes into this work, and also about like what we can achieve together. So a little bit of an introduction on who I am. My name's Mita. I became a trustee when I was 21 and became chair of a board when I was 25. I am now CEO of the Young Trustees movement. And the reason why we exist is because less than 3% of trustees are under the age of 30, which is a real problem for those boards to be able to navigate uncertainty, reflect the interests of their communities, and also future-proof decision making as well. And what I am so excited by is by having young people in boardrooms and in these spaces. It's a real innovation to enable us boards to be able to better do those things and get to the root of how we can make governance better for everyone. And I think Grace I'll let Grace do their introductions as well, about a little bit of the workshop that they did with you all as well at the conference. And that's, yeah, a little bit of an introduction to me, and my pronouns are she, her. Over to you, Grace.
Hey all, thank you, Mita. So yeah, I'm Grace. I'm training manager here at Young Trustees Movement. I think I met a lot of you in Stroud back in March. I might be making up, I think it was March, where we ran the session on like taking action to diversify your trustees and your volunteer base. I'm also a young trustee myself, and I really enjoyed the session that we ran together in Stroud. I think I was really inspired by the amount of sort of actions and pledges that people made at the end of that. So a whirlwind recap of the session. As Mita said, the work we do, we think is so important because governance is generally not very diverse. And if your work sort of matches that pattern, that's not something that we ever want people to feel like shame or guilt around, but it is important that we are just like very honest and acknowledge that a lot of work needs to be done to diversify governance. And also it doesn't always have to be really hard. And the tool that I think was sent round to you last week is something that we designed for your conference specifically. And the reason why we've made this tool and do it in that way is that it can help you identify the areas that do need work, but it doesn't have to be, it can feel really overwhelming sometimes, I think, but it doesn't have to be overwhelming, and that's some of the work that we try and support other people to do. So yeah, like Mita said, less than 3% of trustees are aged under 30, and we know that like representation across lots of different demographics and identity factors are in a similar pattern. And you know, some of the common barriers that we see to representation on boards and in volunteer bases as well are rooted around like accessibility, whether that's applying for roles or just even hearing about opportunities. You know, 90% of trusteeships are filled through word of mouth, which means to become a trustee, you kind of have to already know a trustee. And that's like one of the barriers that we work through in the tool that's been shared. So like, how do we promote opportunities, whether that is on your board, or I know a lot of you were interested in diversifying your volunteer base as well. Then thinking about structural barriers and the way that power and inequality works, and how that might be showing up in our workplaces or in our governance, and the steps we can start to take to improve diversity and inclusion in the work we do. And then retention is another big issue that we see around governance and volunteer bases, is that you might appoint a young trustee, or you might get a diverse volunteer base, but actually if the underlying cultural work hasn't been done or isn't being addressed, then people won't stick around. And then that sort of becomes a vicious cycle of people, you know, struggling to get good representation, and then the environment not being right for the people they appoint, so they leave, and then it just keeps perpetuating. But hopefully the resource that we've shared with you is something that we can all use to like start making the changes that are so important. I'm going to stop talking because I could ramble about this for a very long time. But yeah, happy to be here and to take any questions, or me and Nita can just keep talking about stuff.
Yeah, thank you. Grace, can I just also add, like, what I think one of the reasons why people said that that tool was so helpful as well is because often, like, after hearing all of this, people are like, yes, like I'm here because I care and I want to do a lot of this work, but sometimes this just feels really overwhelming, and it's like where to start. And that toolkit is a helpful place to be like, let's identify what the current situation is, and here is where we can start. And I also just want to encourage you all to bring all of your questions. There is no such thing as a silly question. This space is to ask all of the silly questions. If you're thinking it, someone else is thinking it. So if you're brave enough to ask those questions, that is what this session is for.
Thanks, Mita. That's exactly what I just popped on the screen. I was my thoughts exactly, and we did have a comment during when you were talking, Mita and Grace, around saying how much they enjoyed the session at the conference. So yes, I encourage you to use the Q&A box, and please start typing away your questions, and Jenny will be facilitating the Q&A.
At the moment, we have no questions. Is anybody's got any? If you look at, if those who are unsure, right at the bottom of your screen, there is a speech marks with a Q&A underneath it. If you open that up for those who are unsure.
And while, sorry, Jenny, did I cut you off?
Oh, that's fine.
Oh no, I was just going to say, while you're doing that, I might kick off with some of the most commonly asked questions,
yes, please.
that we get as well. So often we often find as well, when people are thinking about why not young trustees, it's also a reason it enables you to identify the barriers to young trusteeship. I've to this day never met anyone against the concept of having young trustees, but just really aware of the barriers that exist, and just using those opportunities of when you're thinking, okay, why, if I was to do this, why would I not do this? Identifying those as questions or points helps us grow and move to the next point. So example of this is where we are is a very intimidating space. Grace, if I were to ask you this question, where lots of people say to us, you know, our boards are really important, it's really intimidating. I was a CEO of 5 years before I joined the board, and I came into the board and I felt intimidated. So that wouldn't be fair on a young person. What would you say to that, Grace?
I like that you are giving me questions. This is fun. Me and Mita have conversations like this all the time. So I want to get my answer right. So like trusteeship is a commitment, and it has to be like driven by passion. But I think it's so easy for people to make assumptions about what young people can or can't do, or what young people are or are not interested in. And we're generally quite anti-assumption. Like, we work with so many great young trustees and our ambassadors who are like highly passionate, capable, driven trustees, and it's really sad that assumptions like that might mean that they don't get appointed, because they're great people that we have the joy of working with all the time. I think mindset is such an important thing when it comes to making change. If you don't have the right mindset or the willingness to to try and to make things different, then probably going to be your own biggest blocker in that sense. Like across all the different charities and organizations that we've worked with, one of the big indicators of how successful this sort of diversifying work goes is the mindset of the people in leadership positions or who are working with volunteers or trustees. Like, it makes such a massive difference. So I would say understandable why people might think that way, but having that willingness to question and like examine any internalized like assumptions or ideas you have about young people and the work that is required to be a trustee is a really important first step.
Right. So if this is an intimidating space, then rather than saying young people don't belong here, it's yes, and let's change that.
Mm-hmm.
Great. I think there were some questions.
Yeah, we've got a couple of questions started to come in now. So from Bernie, if we were to contact you to fill a trustee vacancy, do you have geographical lists of young trustees or young people who may be interested in being trustees?
Yes, we do. So what we have for free is on our website, you can upload our opportunity for free, and we'll send it out to our network to see on the vacancy page. Also, equally on social media, we're always more than happy to just like retweet or reshare anything. If it's regarding like a particular demographic, we do have a CRM system, and so we would charge a fee for you to come to us and target a particular demographic group. But what I would say is, if you don't have a budget and you're like, what can I do with zero budget? Yeah, just feel free to like post it on the website or also post it on social media, and then also contact local like charities who work with young people, local schools, and ask them to share this opportunity, including like going to speaking to schools and just telling people why they would make great trustees. We find that would also be a really great method that doesn't cost money.
Thank you. Yeah, I am. Terry says, we at the BCS Birmingham, is that? I've tried several times to thank you. I've tried several times to source young trustees, but we've not been successful. I guess it's a room full of old folk. How do we improve the outcome?
Shall I start and you can add on, Mita? Cool. Obviously, like every board and organization is different, so I'm going to give like general advice that we'd probably give. I think a big way to try and like diversify your board, which maybe doesn't take like as much work as some things, is really thinking about how you recruit. So related to what Mita was saying in response to the previous question, so thinking about who is seeing this, where are we promoting it, who are we talking to about it, thinking about working with like local young people's organizations or services, local colleges or universities, places like that are really great. And like quite straightforward steps to try and get young trustees and get young people interested. Something that we see quite a lot on adverts for trustees is a requirement for X years of experience. And obviously, if you're a young person, that's not going to be something that you necessarily have. So making sure that your criteria, both in terms of like what you're putting out there, but also how you select people, is rooted in practical experience and skills rather than something that can have like a number of years put on it. Because, you know, if you want young people, you can't have like, you need 10 years of experience of doing this, because it's not going to be possible. Thinking about how you do the recruitment process in terms of access, and you know, a long formal interview or requesting like a long CV is also something that might be inaccessible, not just to young people. There are lots of reasons why the way that recruitment might not be accessible for someone. So thinking about how can you sort of deformalize the process a little bit. And then thinking about, are your policies in line with who you're trying to get? So young people, generally speaking, don't have as much like money as people who are maybe more established or more you know, further along in their careers. So being like, oh, is one of our policies that we can, you know, pay up front for people's travel to trustee meetings and things like that, like really common barriers that can be really easily fixed. Is there anything you'd want to add to that, Mita?
I think that was great. Thank you, Grace. Also, shout out to Terry for trying several times. Like, that passion to get people in the room will result into an outcome. And the fact that you've tried several times, come to this webinar and asking these questions and are open to it, I think is something that should really be celebrated, as well as using this network to bring in pathways into governance. So people say it's a common problem where they say, find me the trustees, let alone the you know, the diversity of trustees. And there are a couple of solutions to this that Grace has already touched on. One of those also includes developing pipeline schemes. I think Lucy in the chat said that they have been working on a pathway into governance roles. So that sounds very exciting, and maybe just sharing best practice with each other as well. And what is really exciting about some of these pathway programs as well is a lot of young people tell us, like, when they look at the vacancy roles, they think, oh, someone like me could never do this. So it's creating a pathway for people who realize someone like them is exactly who they need, and realize that actually people who are part of these boards are actually quite lovely and would really welcome them to be there as well. Yeah, and just as Grace already identified, is just getting those people who you want to attract in the room. So building an advisory board and breaking down every part of the process, just as Grace mentioned, to giving them their piece of advice of like how they would set up the advertising program. And then the single biggest thing that we've heard of getting people to come on a board is when somebody who is in the position of recruitment reaches out to young people and say, I've seen your skills, you would make a fantastic trustee. That is the single biggest thing, as well as demystifying the idea of like what a trustee actually does, and therefore why they are so needed in the room.
Thank you for that. Ian has asked a question. Is there a lower age limit for a young trustee, please?
Outside of the law, no. We use young trustee to mean a trustee aged 30 or under. And I mean, if you have been to the session or any of our previous work, we're very explicit around it's not because we think trustees aged under 30 are like a different group of trustees or more or less capable. It's simply to highlight that disparity that Mita was describing earlier. Legally, charity trustees have to be 18. Am I right if it's a CIC, you can be 16, Mita? Yeah, but apart from outside of the law, there isn't a lower age limit.
Yeah, some people have like people who are not legally a trustee, but they can be like in the room to contribute to the conversations.
Thank you for that. Any more questions, please, at the moment? Well, we haven't got any more questions at the moment.
Can I also ask a question to everyone in here as a reflection moment? It is to say, if you were going to take one step now to take your next step, what would that be? Would there be any barriers and blockers to doing that? And also, there is so much wisdom in this room as well. Is there anything that you would want to share with others in the network, or offers of support from your learnings that you have that you want to share with others?
Oh dear, we've all gone quiet at the moment.
That's okay. While there is a reflection on those things, I might just reshare some of our general top tips to see if that is helpful. Is that helpful, Jenny?
And Terry's just said they've recently gained their youngest trustee, 40-year-old. At 40.
It's all about
it's
intergenerational governance.
It's in the right direction. Bernie's just put their next step will be send a role description for a marketing trustee to you, if that's all right. So carry on now. Well, sorry.
No, that's great. And like, yeah, I think sending role descriptions to like, I think what is fantastic about this network is asking yourself the question. I don't know how often you meet up with each other or have opportunities to share with each other, but like, how can you lower the amount of work through this network? So if you all got together and said, well, you know, we are all going to commit, like all 7 of us here are going to commit to take the next step, how can we break down these things to getting a really good role description? And then you get young people to critique that role description. And I would say the young people that you have connections to within your like schools and networks, there's going to be natural pipelines for the young people who you're looking for. Look within the network of what already exists as to like who is interested in this stuff and who do we want as a target audience, and then get them to really critique that role description. So I know that you have maybe a lot of like young volunteers, for instance, or if there is a school who is interested and you do a talk and they're interested in restoration, like getting them as a focus group to do that piece of work is probably going to help the whole network, and then sharing that information around is helpful. I think Lucy put in the chat, we have found that young people sharing their experiences with other young people is fantastic, is a fantastic way to promote opportunities and encourage others to get involved. We agree, Lucy. We'd love to hear more from you. What are more of your top tips?
Lucy, if you'd be happy to come on and me to make you a panelist so you can talk about the experiences of having that programme you had. Just put in the chat and then I can make you we'll move you to a panelist. Thank you.
Love that. Very excited to hear what you've done, Lucy, and to learn from you.
Let me try how do I do this? Right, Lucy, promote to a panelist and allowed to talk. Have I promote to panelist? So Lucy, you should now be able to come on as a panelist, I believe, and talk. Thank you. Hello, Lucy.
Hello there. Now I've got to check I've not got like piles of dirty washing behind me or anything.
Lucy, you already have the coolest background.
I know I've not even gone blurry for this one because I wasn't expecting to be on. So good morning, everyone. Anyway, hello.
Can I ask you questions? Can we just do like an impromptu Q&A? Can we ask you questions, Lucy? I'd just love to know, like, how did this get started and just everything, like, yeah, who got this program started and a little bit of information around the why.
Yeah, sure. So I've been the youth lead for the trust for several years now, and we tried lots and lots of different things. So we tried to set up a youth board numerous times with varying degrees of success. We found that it works incredibly well on particular projects. It was more challenging where we were just trying to create a national youth board. The logistics of expecting young people to travel the length and breadth of the country to get to meetings and things like that was a bit challenging, as well as just having a specific focus. That what was the ask of the young people? What did we actually want them to come and get involved in and make sure that they felt as though it was meaningful and they were actually making a difference? And we're a huge organisation, change takes time, so sometimes we were aware that it might be a bit frustrating for them to come to meetings and not see the impact of what they were doing. So trying various things, as I say, varying degrees of success. And then we landed on the idea of a youth fellowship. So actually having something that was a bit of a pathway into the governance role. So actually, if young people weren't quite ready to join our board of trustees, perhaps they needed to get to know us as an organisation a little bit more. So actually, how could we do that? How could we create very real, genuine opportunities for them to take a lead on a particular project? So we called it our social innovation project. It's a really important part of the fellowship. So it's all around training and development. It's helping them build their own personal and professional networks. It's very much tailor-made to that individual of what are your career aspirations, where do you want to kind of get to, what's your reason for getting involved. And then they work together on this social innovation project where the trust presents a very real problem or challenge that we're facing at the moment and says, over to you. we'll support you and we'll give you all the kind of make all the right connections internally or with external partners that you need to. But basically, we don't know what to do with this. Bring your kind of perspectives, bring your lens, bring your skills, and really help us to create solutions for this. And so that's the Social Innovation Project, which is a nice kind of meaty project that the youth fellows can genuinely take ownership for. They try different things. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. That's fine. That's life, isn't it? So I think that's kind of a really important part of the kind of the experience, is that it's not expected to be perfect, and you've not got to come up with the absolute ideal solution. You've just got to kind of try different things out. And then another big part of it is about being advocates and ambassadors for who we are, for what we do for the wider sector. And so the youth fellows have been and spoken at various events. They've shared their own experiences, but they're also then promoting it to other young people. So as we're recruiting for our next cohort of youth fellows, hopefully our existing youth fellows will go out and do some of that promotional work, which is far better than me as a 40-odd-year-old going out and trying to do it. So
thank you so much for sharing that, Lucy. And what I loved in what you were saying there is, like, we didn't try to be perfect. We knew this stuff was going to be iterative. Like, when there's a barrier, that's an opportunity to be like, okay, this is our next step. And the best work always happens like that. I also loved what you said around brief as well. Like, we find when there's like youth, like, this might be connected to like the wider youth voice that happens within the organization. And when you're doing that, one of the most important things to do is ensure that the brief of what you're doing is different, because an advisory board for operational stuff is very different for governance stuff, and just ensuring that everyone is clear on that in the process as well. I'm curious as well, like, how does this, is there a particular link to governance at the moment with the with this group?
Yeah, there is. So the pilots, we've run 2 pilots, so started last October, so they're imminently going to finish, but thankfully all of the young people involved want to stay engaged with us, so they may then go on to mentor the next cohort of young people who are coming through. But the way that links to governance at the moment, the original idea was that these youth fellows would sit on our boards, so they'd sit on our regional advisory boards, they'd sit on our advisory groups, and then we're like, actually we don't quite know whether that would work. Is the timing right for that? Is that the right opportunity? And so that's why this kind of pathway idea came out. And so they have worked very, very closely with our London and South East Regional Advisory Board, and then with our National Youth Engagement Advisory Group. So they've essentially joined those meetings, they've been part of those conversations, but they're not full members on those groups yet. That is one of the progression routes that's open to them if they want to join them. So they're absolutely getting to see how that works, to kind of understand the conversations that happen there, to see the change and the difference that's made from those conversations, but without throwing them in the deep end, no pun intended, to just kind of say, right, off you go, you're now full members of this. It's more a kind of, here you go, come and find out about it, and then decide if you want to be full members.
Right, yeah, because a lot of people tell us as well sometimes, sorry, did someone speak? I didn't want to cut anyone off. No, I'm just making it up in my head. Sometimes people tell us, like, if the space is quite intimidating, or if it is a very new space, there is so much that goes on internally to say, like, do I belong in this space? So the more that you can create a sense of belonging in anything that you're doing, whether that is in like meet and greets, often we find that people, once they meet existing trustees and they're like, that person was so nice and they really wanted me to be there, they're like 10 times much more likely to apply. I'm curious as well, Lucy, I am unaware of like how this beautiful big structure works. If somebody was to come with you and says, could your youth board like evaluate or your, I'm sorry, I don't know the correct terminology, the group of young people you have, if they could review one of our role descriptions and to see if it's something that they could apply for, could they do that to your group?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's what we're now setting up. I mean, it is just a pilot, so I'm not pretending that we've got it completely nailed, or that there weren't loads and loads of things that we learned through the pilots that we're now going to do differently going forward. So it's definitely not a kind of perfect model yet. But what we're trying to do as part of this is to set up a bit of an alumni network So there will be a group of, and hopefully an ever-growing group of youth fellows who can then be kind of approached by other areas of the organisation to say, can you just cast your eye over this, or could we just sound you out about this, or can we just get your feedback? And actually some of our marketing colleagues have already done that, where they've been setting up new campaigns and they've said, actually, can we just come and do a workshop with the youth fellows? I am aware that at the moment that is a super small group, so we can't pretend that that is in any way kind of representative of what all young people are thinking, but it's the starting point. And I think as that kind of group grows, we'll get more and more kind of diverse perspectives within it, and so actually it'll be a really nice sounding board, and genuinely they'll be able to get far more involved across the trust in all of the different areas as teams kind of come to us to seek their input.
Amazing, thank you. So if I was here as a participant and I was thinking, I'm time poor, I'm resource poor, I have no money to throw on this project, but here is Lucy, can I give Lucy the job description? And for people to just to say, I have no idea of governance, this is the first time I'm looking at this, can someone put a red pen all over it and tell me things I can improve? That is something you could provide for me, potentially.
Yeah.
Amazing. That is
the other thing I should say as well is that we recognise that not all of our colleagues were going to be comfortable with this, or they were definitely all very positive about it, but they were kind of going, well, we don't really know where to start, and actually how do we do this, how is this different to some of our other kind of ways of working with groups of people. So one of the other things that we've done is we've developed a colleague training program. So I say colleagues, I mean employees and volunteers are our colleagues. So actually some training for the people who are going to then be supporting and engaging the youth fellows as well, so that they feel as though they've got the kind of the backing of us as well, I suppose, and can help build their confidence and their capabilities around engaging young people, and actually how that might be a bit different. And one of the training programs we've got, which is one I'm particularly excited about, is managing disruption and innovation in your organisation. So actually the youth fellows might, and certainly we hope they will, come with some completely new ideas, and that might be a bit scary for us as an organisation to go, well, we've never thought of that, and we've never done that before, and what if that doesn't work? And actually it's about that letting go, and it's about feeling comfortable as an employee or as a volunteer to go, okay, over to you, we'll test this out and we'll see how it goes. So yeah, that's just another kind of element to it, I suppose, is that support for the people who are going to be supporting the fellows too.
Lucy, we've had a question coming for you, if that's okay. So Bernie just asked, has the use of Zoom, Teams and Skype, etc. made things easier to get together virtually rather than driving the length and breadth of the country?
Yeah, definitely. Great question. And that was one of our biggest barriers previously, where we've tried to do this actually. So the way the two pilots worked was slightly different as well. So the group that supported the London and South East Regional Advisory Board were all, as you would imagine, from within London and South East. So they were able to get together. So their social innovation project was a bit more practical. They went out and about. They worked with some Somali groups in Tower Hamlets, coming up with an engagement programme. So that was kind of the focus of theirs. For the group that I was supporting, so the Youth Engagement Advisory Group fellows, they were from all over the place, and actually their social innovation project was around creating digital sessions, so using our youth resources that we'd created in lockdown and then kind of translating those into digital sessions that could be run by colleagues, could be run by group leaders. So the vast majority of that, in fact, I think we've only met face to face maybe 3 or 4 times, but we feel as though we've absolutely got that connection because we've had regular Teams meetings and Zoom meetings and worked with external organisations as well to develop those digital sessions. So yeah, it's been really important for us.
Oh, sorry, I'm muted. Brilliant, thanks, Lucy. We do have another question that's come in, which for you all, which is coming from Mike, which says, what are your opinions on existing trustees being in charge of the recruitment and selection process of new trustees? Particularly because, so the rumour goes, people tend to recruit in their image because it's the safe option.
Do you want me to start on this, Misha? Or... Cool. I don't have like a blanket statement answer to this question because it does depend on the people doing the recruitment. Like, I generally speaking think that it's okay and actually often quite helpful to have existing trustees involved in the recruitment of new trustees, because particularly if we think about recruitment kind of being a two-way process. Like, you're seeing if this person is right for your board, but that person is equally checking you out and being like, actually, do I want to be on this board as a trustee? So having existing trustees involved in that process can help potential trustees gauge whether this is like something they want to do. However, what you've said is definitely an issue. People bring their own biases into everything. So a big piece of the work that we do is, you know, not just around like upskilling young people or trying to find young people to fill trustee vacancies. We do a lot of work with existing boards and organizations to challenge those biases and the opinions that people bring with them. So I wouldn't say like it's automatically bad for existing trustees to be involved in recruitment, but I think we do also need to check what their like knowledge and experience is around sort of EDI work and any biases that they might be bringing. Do you have anything to add to that, Mita?
Yeah, I just totally agree. And just if you can get other voices involved in that process, it's just going to be 10 times better as well. For all kinds of reasons that are outside of your control as well. Like, a lot of people have told us, like, if they can see someone like them on the panel, they're more likely just to feel less nervous and feel like they care, even if the person on the panel is like doing everything they can to, you know, make that person feel comfortable.
We just had a quick question from Bernie saying, what's EDI work?
Yeah, sorry, that's me using job jargon. It's equality, diversity and inclusion.
Thank you. We've just had a, it's not particularly a comment, but a question, more of a comment from Ian, just to say that the topics that the restoration deal with are fun, and the issue of the canal is the financial demographic means you've got to have lots of money available, funding to have fun and join in. A 40-year-old trustee is an incredible achievement in the canal world. Young for us is the newly retired.
Could I just ask some clarifications questions around that? Thank you
Yeah,
for sharing that. Yeah, I just love to know what is meant by the issue with the canals is financial demographics mean you have to have a huge amounts of available funding to have fun and join in, just so I understand.
Ian, if you can type that in the chat as opposed to the Q&A, that'd be great.
And while that is happening, I'll answer what I think this is, but I also just want to make sure I'm not making assumptions, because clarification questions are important. First of all, great if you've, I think Ian also shared that they have a ton of experience working with young people, which is excellent. I am also really interested in having a 40-year-old trustee is great, as it is like helping increase the intergenerational representation. I would say don't stop there, because you would be missing out on so much if you do not have the representation of, you know, between the 18 and 25 demographic, for instance, and 25 to 30 as well. It's such an essential functioning of governance, and I would say what is normal is just not okay, and is just really detrimental to governance. So really starting from the place of what enables good governance, who do we need in the room to enable that, and right now, to like, young people are so needed as a core functioning of that, and having that as a target is incredibly important. Did anyone want to add to that?
Can I just quickly come in on the point around the kind of, you need to have certain finances to engage and enjoy with the waterways, and I think it's about the diversification of how waterways are viewed, how they're enjoyed, how they're engaged with, and I think that we are seeing those changes. I just think there's so much potential for people to get involved, and they don't necessarily see the waterways as places for them at the moment. And the more that we can do, the more that we can offer accessible activities, the more that we can have people using them as their walking route to get to work, or cycling, or dog walking if you go along the canal rather than going to somewhere else, or walking along the roads. I think, you know, the work that we're doing with Ramblers and Sustrands to encourage more people, the stuff we're doing around getting more people kayaking and canoeing, I think, you know, there are I think it's close to 9 million people who live within a kilometre of their local canal. So actually, if we can be starting to show those people that there are ways that they can enjoy the canals, that, you know, even if you're just coming down and enjoying being by water and enjoying that quiet, you know, moment to relax, then that it starts to change the way people are viewing canals, and starts to encourage people to say, oh, these are places that are for me. This is where I can, you know, I can come and enjoy it, and I've got as much right to be here as anybody else. I think it's about kind of challenging those perceptions a little bit as well of who the waterways are for.
Thank you. I haven't seen anything come in just yet, and I must apologise that if you keep seeing my hand being raised, because it's so close to the Q&A box. So if you see my hand come up, I don't. It's just an accident. I meant to press Q&A.
You have a lot to say, Jodie. That's okay. Should we
have we covered Ian's comments? Because I'm sorry, I just had to disappear a few minutes. I've got things going on at home. He mentioned the topics we're dealing with are fun. The issue with canals is the financial demographics mean you have a huge amount of available funding to have the fun and actually join in. A 40-year-old trustee is an incredible achievement, looking back to Terry's comment, in the canal world. Young for us is newly retired.
That's what was chatted about now, Jenny. I've just sent you a little message.
Okay. Sorry.
No, it's okay. Yeah, we're just waiting for Ian to just to give us a little bit more clarity around that point, and we can discuss that further.
Yeah, and I think that also reminds me of just another point, I think, as well, of when you are recruiting young people into this space, like ensuring that you don't only pigeonhole them into like, oh, like how do we like do marketing, and like how do we engage with new technologies, for instance. Like, again, young people are really essential to the core functioning of governance. Like, how do we ensure like we are managing risk in this space? How are we diversifying our income streams? All of those things are the things that people have been raving about the impact of having young trustees on their boards about, because they're there as a whole trustee. The only reason why we use the term young trustee is to reflect a lack of a demographic or representation in that area. So just ensuring that you're getting the actual full benefits of having diversity of perspectives on all issues. That was just the point, Jodie. And I wonder if we've covered everything, we can give people the gift of time potentially.
Yeah, there's just a comment that's coming from Terry, just to say that before COVID, they started some community engagement work with primary schools with a view to young parents through their children, aiming to resurrect it when we get our new community engagement employee.
Amazing. This is so exciting. Is there a way to like share like stuff that Terry does, for instance, with the community, and just like inspire others and to share those lessons and things? Because as Lucy mentioned, like a lot of the time it's like not about getting it perfect, and the more people can share like what they're doing to get to the next step, I think will be really helpful for the community.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a Canal and River Trust Restoration Facebook group. It's got 3,500 members, and the majority are restoration societies and their members, and we get lots of posts in there around you know, kind of, we did this and it really worked for us, and you know, I'd recommend this, or we're struggling with this issue. Has anybody else got any thoughts on how we could approach this? And I know Terry particularly is very active in that group, so it's great to see what the society are doing. Yeah, we encourage all and anyone who's a member of that group to post, ask any questions. Like I said, there's no such thing as a silly question, so that's a great resource to utilize. I think we have got a couple of minutes if anyone wants to post any more questions in the Q&A or chat. I think there's a comment that
people are sorry.
That's okay.
I was just going to name something that's maybe practical but worth saying, is that we've mentioned that you can list opportunities with us, and our website homepage is currently broken. However, the rest of the website is working, and the homepage will be back today, hopefully. But the link I've put in the chat is a direct link to where you can search for and list trustee vacancies, just because if you try and go to our homepage, you're going to get an error message, but the website is still working. So please go straight to this link if you do want to do any other work with us.
Thanks, Grace. I'll just see if there's any other questions that come in, and if not, we'll start to wrap up today's webinar. Okay, well, I can't see anything that has come in, but if there is anything that you are burning to ask, then just drop me an email and let me know if we have missed anything. So it's time to wrap up the webinar today. Thanks so much to Mita, Grace and Lucy for taking the time today to facilitate the webinar, and Jenny as well, and Bob for facilitating the Q&A and doing all of the tech, anything tech. Bob, thank you very much for sorting out the chat for me as well. I couldn't talk to you all a little bit earlier today. So thanks for coming on and sharing your thoughts, questions and experiences. There is a blog post up on the Canal River Trust website, which is all about our work with the Young Trustees movement. So I'll pop a link to that in the chat box now. And also we do have another webinar coming up in November, which is all about crowdfunding for your restoration projects. We know that funding is one of your big challenges, and you've asked us for some innovative and new ways about raising funds. So we're doing one on crowdfunding. So I'll also drop the link to the booking page for that session that's coming up in November in the chat box. And also we've got the information available on Canal River Trust and IWA's websites. You've got the Canal River Trust Restoration Facebook group, and also the Restoration Hub newsletter as well. And as Grace and Mita have mentioned, the Young Trustees movement have got lots of brilliant resources. We will send out an email with some links in, which we've shared previously. They have, for example, a 1 hour free session that you can go along to, and you've got the tool to refer back to as well, plus the presentation from the conference. So I'll share all of those after today. I'll just drop the links in now. But thank you again for everyone for attending, and hope everyone enjoys the rest of their week. And I'll stop talking now in case anybody else wants to say anything while I find and drop these links.
Okay, thanks, Jodie. That was great. It was great meeting you all. And it was great hearing like the different things that you're doing. This movement and everything that we share is a result of kind of people across the country historically to share their best practice and just help everyone kind of build on each other's ideas and share best practice. So thank you for being part of the movement, and really looking forward to using your ideas to inspire others as well.
Thank you for that, everybody. Grace and Lucy, not Lucy, Grace and Lucy as well, Mita. We will get the links to this up and shared to you all as soon as we can, and then it will be edited and put on a YouTube, if that's okay, so that people can refer back to it. Thank you for attending, everybody. Bye.
Thanks very much. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.